Perhaps we can focus our reflection today on a symbol that is very important in Christian iconography, ang puso, the heart. The title of this homily is Chiffon Cake Heart. That is my English translation for the Pinoy concept of pusong mamon. Our gospel today is obviously a repetition of the story of the healing of the leper, which we already had as reading last week. Umulit siya. But not exactly, because last week we reflected on the version of St. Luke. Today we reflect on St. Mark's version of the same story. Why? Is there a difference, you might ask? Well, yeah. A very slight but very significant difference. St. Mark tells us explicitly why Jesus dared to do something he was not supposed to do. Remember? He touched the leper. Why did he do that? I think it's because before he touched the leper, he was touched by this man's pitiful condition. St. Mark tells it, says it explicitly, moved with pity, he touched the leper. In Tagalog, you might describe Jesus as a man with a chiffon cake heart. May pusong mamon. Soft cakes like chiffons move. And you know that when something is soft and delicate, we are all the more tempted to touch it. What was it that touched the heart of Jesus about this man's situation? Well, I think he was touched by the fact that this human being had become so dehumanized that instead of getting some help or care for his disease, he was treated as an outcast, that he was condemned to go through a kind of suffering that you would not wish even on animals. And perhaps he was also moved that people were no longer moved at all by the plight of a fellow human being like him. You know, they say Christianity was the very first to propose the equality of all human beings in dignity. That nobody deserves to be treated as a non-human. That you cannot allow the humanity of your fellow human beings to be desecrated without, in effect, desecrating your own humanity. We have a word for this: compassion. May salita din tayo dito sa Tagalog. Malasakit. Malasakit. Parang sakit. Yung bang parang nasasaktan ka pag nasasaktan ng isang taong may kaugnayan sa iyo. It's like feeling the pain of your fellow human being as your own pain. It is about suffering when you witness the suffering of your neighbor. It is about being moved to action in order to ease the pain of your neighbor and precisely also to ease your own pain. In the book of Exodus, before Moses discovered that he was actually the son of a Hebrew slave, he did not know. He did not know why he felt so strongly about the sufferings of the Hebrew slaves. Remember, he was adopted by the Egyptian princess, and he was raised with a silver spoon in his mouth. And we're told that one day he even got into trouble for defending a slave who was being maltreated by an Egyptian taskmaster. At some point, Moses found himself running away from the comfort of Pharaoh's palace. He settled in Midian, worked as a shepherd for Jethro. He married a girl, and he had a child with her. And he thought that he would find peace that way. Until, of course, God spoke to him through the burning bush. And the revelation is about a God who feels the pain of his people and who now allows Moses himself to be disturbed by this pain. Alam niyo ang problema kapag pusong mamun ka, you suffer the consequence of being compassionate. Our gospel tells us because Jesus cared for the marginalized, he ended up being marginalized himself. It's like he switched places with the leper and became himself the outcast. Hindi ba ganito rin yung sinasabi ni Prophet Jeremiah when he lent his prophetic voice to God's anger about the injustices in the Israelite society? At some point, the prophet became so miserable, he resolved to call it quits. Isang propetang gusto nang mag-resign because the ministry made him miserable. Ang sabi niya one day, I don't like to talk for God anymore because He always gets me into trouble. I will just shut up. But after a while, he says to himself, when I do this, your words are burning in my heart. They are imprisoned in my bones, and I cannot endure it. Ang first reading natin is from the letter to the Hebrews. And it speaks about the opposite of the pusong mamon. What is the opposite? The hardened heart. Isang pusong matigas. Or a heart that goes astray. You know, it begins with a long quotation from Psalm 95. And we happen to be very familiar with Psalm 95 kasi every day, it is the invitatory antiphon for morning prayer. And it says, today, listen to the voice of the Lord. Do not grow stubborn as your fathers did. Do not harden your hearts as your fathers did at Meribah and Massa, when they challenged me and provoked me, although they have seen all of my works. 40 years I endured that generation, God says. I said they are a people whose hearts go astray. Ang kanilang mga puso ay lumilihis. And they do not know my ways. And so I swore in my anger, they shall never enter into my rest. The psalm, you know, has a very serious warning. Merong matinding warning sa mga taong matitigas ang puso. For people who have become apathetic, people who have become totally indifferent towards the sufferings of their fellow human beings. Ano yung punishment? It says, they shall never enter into my rest. Meaning, like Cain. Remember the story of Cain and Abel? After Cain murdered his brother, sabi pa niya, am I my brother's keeper? You remember the punishment? You will be a restless wanderer. Meaning your heart will never have peace because you have not known the way of the Lord. And that way is the way of compassion. Well, if hardened hearts can lead us to damnation, ang pusong mamon can lead us to salvation. When our hearts can feel the pain of other people, we save our humanity. Isa sa mga paborito kong larawan ni Kristo ay ang Sagradong Puso, the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And in the icon, Jesus is pointing at his heart, a heart that is exposed and pierced with a crown of thorns and bleeding, but it is also a heart that is on fire. It is supposed to be our image for divine love. That is why on First Fridays, kinakanta natin, O Sacred Heart, O Love Divine, do keep us near to Thee, and make our hearts so like to Thine, that we may wholly be. It is when our hearts have become pusong mamon, hearts that can feel compassion for our fellow human beings, that they truly become holy hearts like the Sacred Heart.
O Sacred Heart, O love divine, do keep us near to Thee, and make our love so